I used to hide in bathroom stalls during lunch break to escape their cruelty. The daily routine of insults and shoves became my normal, a prison where I shrank smaller each day. Like a butterfly folded back into its cocoon, I concealed my drawings beneath history notes until Mr. Parker discovered them. He saw talent where everyone else saw a target. Alex, have you ever considered designing backdrops for the debate team? That single question lit a path forward when I couldn't see through my darkness. This is how I found my voice when bullies had stolen it. What if the hallways of your school felt like minefields and every classroom a potential ambush site? For Alex Chen, this wasn't some hypothetical scenario. It was his daily reality. Each morning began with the same ritual, calculating which routes would minimize encounters with his tormentors, mentally mapping the safest passages through Westlake High's crowded corridors. Alex had mastered strategic invisibility. He timed his arrival precisely before the bell, when classrooms were partially filled, visible enough to be marked present, but not conspicuous enough to draw attention. He navigated alternate routes between classes to avoid Jordan and his friends, and made the library his lunchtime refuge, where the stern librarian's rules provided the protection that school officials failed to offer. The attacks rarely left physical marks that would have been too obvious, too reportable. Instead, they were calculated psychological warfare. During one particularly humiliating incident, Jordan had loudly announced Alex's nomination for a fictional Most Likely to Die Alone yearbook category, triggering laughter that followed Alex for weeks. Daily torments included whispered insults as classmates passed his desk, deliberate silences when he entered rooms, and his belongings mysteriously appearing in toilet stalls. Group projects brought subtle signals between classmates, ensuring Alex would become the unwanted addition to some reluctant team. "It's like they have a playbook," Alex once wrote in his journal. "A comprehensive guide to destroying someone without leaving evidence." By sophomore year, Alex had memorized his tormentors' schedules alongside his own, identifying safe stairwells, empty bathrooms, and unpatrolled corners of the schoolyard. The toll was measurable. His grades slipped from A's to C's, his class participation diminished to silence, and his sleep fragmented with anxiety dreams. Research shows that bullying victims experience depression and anxiety rates comparable to children suffering physical abuse. In Alex's case, this manifested as constant vigilance, his body remaining in a perpetual state of alert. Within this daily struggle, Alex's notebook emerged as both battleground and sanctuary. While classmates took academic notes, his pencil traced intricate battle scenes. Medieval warriors faced mythical beasts. Futuristic soldiers navigated alien landscapes. Lone heroes stood defiant against overwhelming odds, the margins filled with detailed weapons and tactical formations. These weren't random doodles. They were elaborate narratives where heroes prevailed through intelligence rather than strength, where outmatched protagonists discovered unexpected abilities, where survival relied on perception and strategic thinking, skills Alex developed daily just to navigate school life. "In my drawings, there are consequences," he explained to the school counselor, who noticed his declining grades but missed their cause. "If someone attacks, they face resistance. There's justice eventually." The counselor suggested joining a club, completely missing the artwork's significance. Tuesday afternoons in history class offered unexpected respite. During documentaries in dimmed lighting, Alex could lose himself in his illustrations. One such afternoon, absorbed in sketching a complex battle formation, Alex remained unaware the classroom had emptied until Mr. Parker's shadow fell across his desk. Alex instinctively shielded his notebook, tensing for familiar ridicule. He'd experienced it before, dismissive teachers confiscating his distractions. But Mr. Parker simply stood there, head tilted slightly. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked, his voice carrying genuine curiosity rather than judgment. Alex hesitated, fingers splayed protectively over the pages. His drawings were the one space where he controlled the narrative, where he wasn't defined by his tormentor's perceptions. Sharing them felt more vulnerable than any physical exposure. Those pencil-sketched warriors had been Alex's only allies in a war against isolation, but as Mr. Parker stood patiently waiting, something unprecedented occurred to Alex. What if his artistic refuge wasn't just an escape from his reality, but potentially a bridge to something better? The subtle difference between pity and recognition can change everything. "May I?" Mr. Parker asked, extending his hand toward the notebook but not grasping for it. A request, not a demand. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the now empty classroom, casting shadows across the desk where Alex's fingers still hovered protectively over his private world. Alex's throat tightened. In his experience, adult interest usually meant trouble. Concerned frowns, referrals to counseling, patronizing suggestions about making friends. But Mr. Parker's expression held genuine curiosity rather than the familiar worried scrutiny he'd come to expect. "They're just doodles," Alex said, the lie transparent even to his own ears as he reluctantly slid the notebook across the desk. His heart hammered as years of private creation left the safety of his possession. Mr. Parker turned the pages with careful deliberation, studying each illustration with the attentiveness he usually reserved for primary historical documents. His eyes lingered on a sprawling battlefield where armored figures stood their ground against overwhelming forces, a scene Alex had spent weeks perfecting during lunch periods in the library. "You've developed your own visual language here," Mr. Parker said finally. "The way you've layered the composition creates remarkable depth. And this perspective." He pointed to a vantage point that looked down upon the conflict from above. "It's almost architectural in its precision." Alex shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He'd become accustomed to adults focusing on the content of his drawings, the violence, the conflict, rather than the technique. Their reactions typically ranged from awkward concern to thinly veiled disapproval. "You've got a strong grasp of spatial relationships," Mr. Parker continued, turning to a page where a lone warrior stood surrounded by encroaching shadows. "The tension between negative and positive space here, it's quite sophisticated." The word sophisticated hung in the air between them. No adult had ever used such a term to describe anything Alex had created. His art teachers had called his work interesting or creative, the kind of generic praise that revealed nothing. But Mr. Parker was noticing specific elements, technical choices Alex had made deliberately, but had never articulated. "How long have you been developing this style?" Mr. Parker asked, his tone suggesting it was a natural question rather than an attempt to uncover something troubling. "Since 7th grade, I guess," Alex replied, watching carefully for the moment when his teacher's interest would shift to concern. "It helps me think." Mr. Parker nodded as if this was the most reasonable explanation in the world. "That's how the best art functions." He turned to a particularly intricate page where Alex had designed an elaborate defensive fortification. "Your structural visualization skills are exceptional." He paused, considering something. "Have you ever thought about applying these skills in other contexts?" The question was so unexpected that Alex didn't immediately register what was being asked. "The debate team is working on presentations for the district competition," Mr. Parker explained, closing the notebook with care. "They're struggling with how to visually represent complex arguments. Someone with your talent for spatial organization could transform their materials." Alex stared, trying to process the suggestion. The debate team meant visibility. It meant upperclassmen like Elisa Nguyen and Jason Torres, respected students who navigated the social hierarchy with ease. It meant potentially encountering his tormentors in a new context. "I don't speak in public," Alex said, the words coming out more defensively than he intended. "They need a visual strategist, not another speaker," Mr. Parker replied, sliding the notebook back across the desk. "You wouldn't have to say a word if you didn't want to." The moment stretched between them. Mr. Parker waiting without pressure. Alex calculating risks versus possibilities. The debate team room was on the west side of campus, away from his usual danger zones, and if he limited his involvement to design work. "When do they meet?" Alex heard himself ask, the question emerging before he'd fully decided to pose it. "Tuesdays and Thursdays after school." "Room 214. Mr. Parker's tone remained casual, as if they were discussing something ordinary rather than a potential reconfiguration of Alex's carefully constructed survival strategy. "They could use your help with the Jefferson debate next month, if you're interested." Alex nodded almost imperceptibly, neither committing nor refusing. But somewhere beneath his practiced neutrality, a dangerous spark of possibility had ignited. That dangerous spark of possibility flickered in Alex's mind as he approached room 214 2 days later. Most adults offered the same tired advice about bullying. Stand up for yourself, tell someone in authority, ignore them, and they'll go away. Yet Mr. Parker had suggested something entirely different. A side entrance to social existence through competence rather than confrontation. Could the true solution to isolation exist not in facing fears head-on, but in circumventing them entirely? The door to room 214 loomed before him like a boundary between worlds, the familiar territory of isolation on one side and the unknown landscape of potential acceptance on the other. Alex's mind raced through scenarios of rejection as his fingers trembled against the cool metal of the handle. Beyond this threshold waited the debate team, those articulate students whose academic confidence felt as foreign to him as another language. When he finally pushed the door open, 12 heads turned in unison. The debate team members paused mid-conversation, their collective attention landing on him with the weight of judgment. Alex instinctively hunched his shoulders, eyes dropping to the floor. "Everyone, this is Alex Chen," Mr. Parker announced. "He's joining us today because we have a presentation problem that needs solving." The introduction surprised Alex. There was no mention of social struggles, no hint of a rescue mission. Instead, Mr. Parker continued, "Alex has an exceptional talent for visual communication that I believe could transform our argument frameworks from merely logical to visually compelling." The team captain, Eliza Norega, approached with brisk efficiency. "Perfect timing. We're getting destroyed in the visual aids category," she said, pulling out a chair. "Princeton Prep brought infographics last tournament that made our poster boards look like elementary school projects." Her assessment contained no pity, just the acknowledgement of a problem he might help solve. For 40 minutes, Alex observed their practice debate about infrastructure funding. Their disagreements focused on logic rather than personal attacks. Eliza spread their materials across the table. "This is what we've got. It's factually sound, but visually catastrophic," offered James, without malice. Alex studied their disjointed collection of statistics. Their visual strategy resembled a scattered army without formation. His fingers itched for his pencil as his mind began rearranging elements, creating visual hierarchies. Mr. Parker noticed. "Alex, any initial thoughts?" The attention felt expectant rather than predatory. Alex swallowed hard and reached for his notebook. He began sketching, explaining quietly. You could structure your argument like opposing battle lines, with supporting evidence as reinforcements behind each position. The analogy drew from his private vocabulary of conflict. As his pencil moved, the team leaned in with genuine interest. They weren't looking at him, but at what he was creating, a distinction that made breathing easier. "That actually makes sense," James said. "If we position economic impacts as the front line and environmental benefits as supporting artillery." "Exactly," Eliza nodded. "And we could use color coding to trace how each counter-argument is neutralized." For the first time in years, Alex's perspective was valued. His sketch evolved into a strategy the team enthusiastically adopted. They assigned him to create the visual backbone for their upcoming competition. What made Mr. Parker's approach revolutionary wasn't that it directly addressed bullying. He never mentioned it at all. Instead, he created an environment where Alex's strengths mattered more than his social struggles, a context in which competence became the currency of acceptance. Acceptance based on skill rather than social standing created an unexpected side effect nobody, least of all Alex, had anticipated. The same hands that once trembled while sketching in solitary corners were now redesigning the very power structures that had once crushed him. As the debate team's first competition approached, Alex's visuals transformed from simple supplementary materials into the cornerstone of their presentation strategy. His diagrams appeared on 6-foot presentation boards at the district competition, each bearing the understated "artwork by A. Chen" in the bottom corner, a signature that would soon become recognized throughout Westlake High. The team's second-place finish against Princeton Prep, a school with resources that dwarfed Westlake's, became the talk of the school administration. Principal Harmon requested the winning presentation materials be displayed in the main hallway, transforming Alex's artistry into a currency of respect. Students paused between classes, pointing at the intricate battle-like formations that visualized complex constitutional arguments. The same hallway where Alex once pressed himself against walls to avoid attention now showcased his work to hundreds daily. "Your diagrams made abstract concepts concrete," James told him during their post-competition debrief. "When you showed the 14th Amendment's influence radiating outward to other cases as a solar system rather than a timeline, even I understood the argument better." The team nodded in agreement, and Alex felt a warmth spread through his chest. His perspective mattered here. By the regional semi-finals, Alex's role had expanded beyond visual support. "What if we restructured the rebuttal section?" he suggested during a frustrating practice session, his voice carrying a slight tremble but audible nonetheless. The room fell silent with the attentive pause of consideration. "If we approach it like converging battle lines instead of parallel arguments, we could anticipate their counterpoints here and here." He sketched quickly, the marker moving with newfound confidence. The team captain, Sophia, studied the diagram. "That's actually brilliant. It forces them to address our strongest evidence first." The strategy secured their win against Marshall Academy, and Alex found himself breathing easier, shoulders no longer hunched in perpetual apology. The cognitive dissonance between his past isolation and current value manifested in unexpected moments, like when Trevor casually dropped into the seat beside him in calculus, comparing notes as if they'd been study partners for years, or when Sophia texted him about non-debate matters, sending memes about historical events with inside jokes from team meetings. Physical changes accompanied his evolving status. His mother noticed his grown-out bangs no longer served their purpose of shielding his eyes. His posture straightened incrementally, adding nearly an inch to his perceived height. He began taking direct routes between classes, no longer navigating school geography based on avoidance strategies. The library, once his sanctuary, gradually became just another resource. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, he joined the debate team at their cafeteria table, initially sitting at the edge but eventually finding himself in the middle of animated discussions. "Alex is our secret weapon," Sophia told the school newspaper after their state semi-final qualification. "His visual thinking breaks through communication barriers that words alone can't manage." This framing, Alex as asset rather than burden, rippled through the school's social consciousness, creating a buffer zone of respect that extended beyond the debate team itself. The moment that stopped Alex cold in the empty hallway wasn't the request itself, it was who was asking. Jake Mercer and his two friends, the same boys who had once scattered his sketches across rain-soaked pavement, now stood before him with uncharacteristic hesitation. Their usual swagger had diminished to uncomfortable shifting from foot to foot as Jake finally broke the tension. "We need someone who can make our history presentation not completely tank," Jake muttered, his eyes struggling to meet Alex's. "Mr. Brennan said your designs for the debate team were good." The word "good" seemed physically difficult for Jake to pronounce, like a foreign language his tongue rebelled against. Behind him, Tyler and Damon maintained a careful distance, as if proximity to Alex might somehow diminish their carefully constructed social identities. Alex felt a curious sensation, a complex mixture where power had suddenly shifted. These boys who had once cornered him between classes now needed something only he could provide. His fingers tightened around his backpack strap as memories surfaced. "What's the presentation about?" he asked, surprised by his own steadiness. "The economic collapse after World War I. Germany, inflation, all that stuff." Jake gestured vaguely. "We have the information, but Brennan said our visual elements need serious work if we want to pass." Alex considered walking away, a simple retribution for countless moments of humiliation. Yet something about that path felt unsatisfying, like clinging to an outdated version of himself. "I can help with the design," he said finally, "but I'd need to know exactly what points you're trying to emphasize." Relief crossed their faces, though tension remained in their shoulders. They agreed to meet in the library after school. That afternoon, Alex arrived early and methodically arranged his materials, creating a workspace that radiated competence. When the three boys approached, they carried themselves like visitors to foreign territory. "So, what have you got so far?" Alex asked, gesturing to the folder Jake clutched. They spread their notes, a disorganized collection about hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic. Their academic struggles weren't pretense. They genuinely needed help translating complex economic concepts into something comprehensible. "You need to show how these elements connect," Alex explained, sketching a flowchart. "War reparations led to government printing money, which caused inflation, which destroyed savings." His marker moved with assured confidence across the paper. Jake leaned forward, momentarily forgetting the awkwardness. "That actually makes sense. Can you show how that connects to these political changes?" For the next hour, they worked in strange harmony. Alex maintained professional detachment, offering guidance without seeking approval. The boys asked questions with increasing comfort, their defensiveness gradually dissolving into genuine engagement. What struck Alex most was their deference to his expertise. These same boys who had once dismissed everything about him now waited for his assessment before proceeding. When Tyler suggested using red lines to connect certain elements, he looked to Alex, a small gesture revealing a fundamental shift. "This diagram needs to go center stage," Alex said, pointing to the visualization of currency devaluation. "It tells the whole story at a glance." "That's actually really good," Damon admitted, the compliment coming grudgingly but honestly. As they packed up, Jake awkwardly extended his hand. Thanks. We would have bombed this without your help. Alex accepted the handshake, brief and formal. In that moment, he understood that these boys held no power over him anymore. Their opinion no longer defined his worth. Walking home afterward, Alex realized he hadn't once thought about escape routes during the entire meeting. His mind had been occupied with design problems, not defensive strategies. The transformation hadn't happened through confrontation, but through this quiet shift, like a prisoner who discovers the cell door has been unlocked all along and walks out into unexpected freedom. The final measure of Alex's transformation revealed itself in quiet moments, walking hallways without calculating escape routes, contributing in class without hesitation, his art becoming both refuge and bridge to others. The changes were visible in his straightened posture and less guarded expression, physical manifestations of an inner shift. What Mr. Parker offered wasn't the typical solution to bullying, but something far more enduring, the chance to define himself through creation rather than reaction. The power shifted not when the bullying stopped, but when it ceased to be the organizing principle of Alex's existence. His journey from target to creator reflected the strength that had always existed within him, merely waiting for expression. As he later wrote in his college application essay, "I found my voice not by shouting louder than those who tried to silence me, but by creating something that spoke louder than anything they could say about me." What might we each discover about ourselves if we responded to our challenges not through defense, but through creation,